You're pretty good slingshot, ain't you?
A little quieter.
Six oh one. We started like 11:30 with our regular business meeting, month of June. Yeah. Staff and of course guests, present. Ms. Mullins joined us to with us briefly for the presentation. Welcome everyone. Go ahead and get started with the adoption of the. Second. All right, public comment. Yeah. Appreciate your time. It's all first. About that.
Hey, I just want to let you know I got something to turn that wheel running for Festival. Because they kind of decimated their volunteer rates for the, that went on over the last couple of years. And it was real hard. So they asked Jim, I would do it, said, you better, let's start. And so now I'm doing it. So if you have any questions, I think I've got everything Brian needed for the clothing, the square and whatnot, and there's, the website's not completely updated, but, there's a new vendor application on there, and I'm starting to get responses already. So I think it's gonna be a big expo, like it always has been. New band, people are not ready to accommodate your sponsor, but they're gonna be, they said it sounds great. And it will. That's all I want to say.
Thank you for volunteering.
You're
Even
welcome.
though you didn't volunteer. Thank you, Lisa. Updates we have from Ms. Teresa Neal, the Blue Ridge Regional Hospital.
For having me here tonight. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I do want to bring to your attention that Mission Hospital earlier, or later last year, had requested a CON to need 67 additional beds. And those beds were 37 med-surg beds and 30 ICU beds. Frequently, regional hospitals are having patients that need to be transferred to a more definitive care facility because Mission doesn't have enough beds open to be able to accept those patients. So this would help us with their being able to transfer those patients to a larger facility where they can get definitive care. As you may or may not know, Ms. reached out and said they would like the hospital in the Weaverville, Madison County to support Madison, Yancy, and Greer counties. Our concern is if they put a hospital there, half of our patients at Blue Ridge are from Yancy County. I hope you guys know our wonderful facility we have at Blue Ridge Regional Hospital and the incredible care that our team strives to deliver every single day. We are asking for support, and I have letters here for individuals to support that process or mission to have that CON. And this goes to the Department of Health Services in Raleigh. I guess that's about it. We're just looking for support because we need our hospital to stay open. Because Medicare that has been given most of our staff work in the county. And even though I'm based in nurses and have amazing paramedics that work there, respiratory therapists, imaging techs, everyone. I know they can get a job, but we need to. So I'm asking for your support. Yeah, I do have letters.
Thank you. If you want to, Ms. Neal, you can, and if you got them later, you can try to give council members, I'll have.
Okay.
Give
I will.
Thank you. Comments. Panel Square flowers. Flower tree.
In the square things where, sure, 1, 2. Right? two there that, and I guess that's the name of the person, and he said that, this church that used to do the work in the house where with the, flowers. And I had a couple people interested, so I was told there's no money in the budget for July first, so we're taking any donations that people have, meaning transplants from Friends Garden, I think, and way that shows very much for donated things, but just, I haven't spent a lot of time on working in apartments, working last year. And sort of these and pollinators and so forth, and so it's just. So if anybody has any information, I am on the sunshine list. And I could be happy to come check out any plants. Transplanting is pretty easy. Then my other concern again, I'm back with trees and wondering, he's gonna try to keep the conversation, this is new for me, learning this, so maybe was kind of to inform me how this works, but it's sort of back to trying to figure out, there's a small group of us interested in preserving the old burnt oaks, in particular over by the library, there's a beautiful ancient, I mean, we think there are a couple of them probably 250, 300 years old, and just trying to figure out how we can preserve them before it's too late, and not exactly sure what that process is, but really don't want to see them cut down, and I'm just trying to figure out the best way, I need to get people to bring the significance of preserving that history.
And I think you've already had discussions with Chad, and maybe he's provided you with the North Carolina state law that prohibits local governments from doing any type of regulation on private property. Certainly, we regulate our own property, but when you're talking about the library and properties that come out of the county, probably the best bet would be taught somewhere with the library.
Thank you.
Okay.
Minutes for May meeting. Put it to work session. Motion. Carries two. All right, moving on to item number 4. Budget. Start with that report.
Mr. Mayor and council members, you guys have had, for several months now, that the staff prepared. They did a good job, worked really hard on it, a lot of hours of time. Leslie needs a break, so she'll take vacation next week. But we think it's a good budget, it's balanced on both sides of general fund and water and sewer. Keeping the tax rate the same. There is a 3% that is recommended in our capital improvement plan. Water and sewer, 3% recommended. A 2.5% total. Full-time employees as well as the one-time $500 inflation bonus payment. And those are kind of the highlights. But unless you all have any questions or anything, then I'll just tell you.
Just got a couple of comments I'd like to thank you to as part of the for great budget. Living for the thank you, guys.
We do have one change, what you guys got, and that's in the fire tax, from the department. They received $10,000. Yeah. We increased the fuel line, everything's getting, every fuel line is getting big increase. So we increased the fuel line, so that'd be the only thing, other than what you already said.
The bottom line.
The bottom line is. Yeah.
Second. With that being said, we're gonna I'd like to make a motion to budget for fiscal year 2023. Call vacation. We need to stand up next week.
Yeah. That's.
Too late? Too late.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to item 5. We have Ms. Ellis Marie. Is that correct? Well, you school government here to give a presentation. The floor is yours, Ms. Mullins.
Yeah, thank you all for having me tonight. Can you all hear me? We good?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, so I've been working with Heather and Leslie to do some analysis on the water wastewater utility side of things. My name is Elsa Mullins. I'm a project director at the Environmental Finance Center, and we're hosted within the School of Government at UNC. So we basically function as a nonprofit consulting firm, and I do a lot of direct technical assistance for small water and wastewater systems across the country, not just in North Carolina, but we do a lot of our work here in North Carolina and are very familiar with things. As another one of our big clients is the Division of Water Infrastructure. So I do both applied research and direct technical assistance, and that's the results of that assistance is what I'm going to be kind of sharing with you all tonight. There's going to be a lot of numbers, and so if you ever have questions, feel free to just jump in, interrupt me, and ask them at any point. If I don't hear you right off the bat, then wave your hand or something, because I can see your video pretty well. And Heather and Leslie, if there's anything that I missed that we've talked about that you want to say, feel free to jump into. So I've been over all of this with them, and they have the tools and the information that I'm going to share tonight. So if you have follow-up questions or want to investigate more, they're very capable of running rate scenarios and things too. So I'm going to share my screen here. And can you all see my PowerPoint slide, just the one of them, or can you see multiple?
Both of them.
Okay.
There you go.
That's one. But that's better. Yeah.
All right, can you just see my title slide now?
Yeah.
All right. Good deal. Okay. So the first kind of tool that we like to run through is a financial health checkup tool. And this just provides a great overview of where a town is, where the utility is in terms of revenues, expenses, liabilities, debt service. And I'm going to share, and so what we put in here are numbers from your audits for the last 5 years, because we like to see trends in the numbers, not just 1 year snapshot, but also kind of where the utilities expenses have been, where these benchmarks kind of have been over the last 5 years. So we put in all these numbers from the audits, and I'm going to go through several kinds of financial benchmarks. And we have our default values in there in terms of what to aim for, but they can be adjusted, and I'll show you that. So the first ones we like to talk about are operating ratio. The graph on the left is your operating ratio including depreciation, and that's the operating ratio is kind of expressing whether or not the utility generated enough revenue to pay for not only the day-to-day operating and maintenance expenses, but also save for capital expenses in the future. So that's the depreciation part. That's when your pump runs out or your lines break and you need to replace them. Depreciation is kind of saving for that bit. So on the left is the operating ratio including depreciation, and on the right is the operating ratio not including depreciation. So it just is kind of one number different there. You can see the trends are parallel. And we like to say that for the operating ratio including depreciation, you should be at least at 1. Y'all are at 0.96 for 2021. So saying that the revenue that's being generated is not quite enough to pay for day-to-day expenses and to cover the capital expenses that are coming in the future. And then on the right, the target is still 1, but that can be adjusted too. We kind of like it to see it at 1.2, just because saving for those capital projects are really important. And that's kind of a theme you'll see throughout the presentation tonight, and really one of the key themes that I talked about with Heather and Leslie, that there's just a lot of projects that need to be done, and some of the projects you already have loans or grants for, but some of them you don't. And so kind of looking into the future, how can you make sure that operating ratio is above 1 or 1.2, not including depreciation? And we'll get into that more too, but I'm going to go through a couple other metrics. And this is something you can just look at every year and see if you're kind of making sure you're generating enough revenue to cover those expenses.
And Elsa Marie, it's Heather. We've got this on the big screen, but we're kind of far back from it. So all this information you can send to us, or you have to send to us, and we can forward it on that. They can go on the dashboard on the website and look at it also, right?
Yes. So I can show you later too. I have the North Carolina rates dashboard that we do every year, where we survey all the utilities in North Carolina that charge rates, and we also look at their finances. And we get all that information from the LGC, so you can kind of see in context what your operating ratio is every year when we update that dashboard.
Okay.
So we were just talking, I was mentioning depreciation in terms of, that's kind of a measure of how old your assets are. And so another kind of number we pull from the audits is the percent of capital assets depreciated. So this graph is a little bit confusing, but I like to think about it that if the number was at 0, that would mean that you had an entirely new system, nothing had aged, nothing needed to be rehabilitated, it's brand new. And if it was 100% depreciated, then it would be completely broken and not able to be used anymore. So y'all are hovering right around that 35 number, which is what we like to see for like a target. But I just always put a caveat on here. We're only looking at the numbers part of this, we're doing the finance part of it, not the engineering assessment. So your utility staff, your operators, your engineering consultants, your folks that are kind of on the ground looking at your infrastructure, those are the people that are really going to know, what the costs will be to kind of replace which assets and which ones are kind of nearing the end of their life. Because in the audits, it's just, you know, what year was it bought? We're assuming that it ages at a certain rate from the year. But your folks on the ground know what might be in better condition or worse condition than the audits show. So just recommend always having people with boots on the ground, continuing to update an asset management plan, even if it's just, you know, this pump is probably going to die in the next 5 years. That's valuable information. So next we have the debt service coverage ratio, and this is looking at if you generated enough revenues to cover for your operating and maintenance and also pay for your existing debt service. Leslie and Heather mentioned that there's a new loan coming from DEQ that's about $57,000 a year. This does not include that new loan. It just includes what you all paid from 2021 going backwards. So we like to see it's at I think like 4.5-ish right now, which is pretty strong. Usually lending agencies like to see no less than 1.5, some say no less than 2. It just depends on where you're getting the money. So this means that you're kind of in a good position to get a better interest rate or be looked upon as more favorable terms when you go to borrow money for projects, because you're generating enough revenue to cover that debt service that you already have. Any questions before I go on? And the last two are snapshots, the day the audit was prepared on June 30th. And so that is quick ratio and days cash on hand. Quick ratio, do you have enough liquidity to pay your current liabilities? So that's unrestricted cash, unrestricted assets that you can use to cover liabilities. And then the right hand side is if you stop bringing in revenue today, how many days could you operate given your unrestricted cash? So we like a target of 180, like half a year, and you're right around that for 2021. So that shows you have kind of enough reserves built up to be a buffer in case of emergency. If something were to happen, like say a global pandemic. And days cash on hand is also, well, both of these, but reserves are something that funding agencies will often look at as well. All right, so that's kind of the gist of the financial health checkup tool, which kind of gives just an overview of kind of where Burnsville is for their water and wastewater utilities. And this is something that Heather and Leslie can update every year, and or you can look at the dashboard to get the operating ratio and kind of just keep checking in on some of those to make sure that you don't see like sharp decreases. And you can aim for targets if you want to increase your days cash on hand or something like that. This is a great way to do it. So looking ahead, we've heard from Heather and Leslie that there's a lot of infrastructure needs, both on the wastewater side with the consent decree and then also on the water side. But you know, exactly how much revenue you're going to need to generate will depend on how many loans and grants you get, what percent principal forgiveness you get, and that kind of thing. But even just to keep up with what you have right now for your debt service, that $57,000 coming in from DEQ and additional payments, you need to raise rates to kind of meet that, which is incorporated into this year's budget. So one of the things I did was fill out the rates analysis tool. And this is a pretty fun tool. I like data, so this has a lot of data in it. And it basically just takes your rate revenue and compares it to your expenses. And what's powerful about it is you can model rate increases on the base and or volumetric side, as well as changing your rate structure for the next 5 years. And then the tool actually models out farther than that, but it only visualizes 5 years. And you can also model increases in debt service. So I'll talk through some of that as I go through the tool, but it's great for just kind of an estimate of comparing revenues and expenses, given what you know now, and what rate increases might do in the future. So there's the revenue side includes the rate structure and then also consumption. So I organized consumption for 12 months to get the monthly average and the average out for seasonal variation, and number of accounts, and incorporated assumptions like increased efficiency, so a slight decrease in consumption every year, and some other things as well. I'm happy to go into more details, but I don't want to get bogged down by the read. And then on the expense side, we have operating expenses, debt service, and then building up reserves from rates, and looking at your current fund balance. So this is kind of the result of your current rate structure. The peach bar is the revenue staying with your existing rates, and that purple bar is using new rates. And this is for a 4% increase every year. I just put that in, and then the red dotted line is the expenses, and those expenses include not only your current debt service, but also an additional 65,000 that Leslie and Heather told me was probably coming down the road sometime in the next year or two. So that's kind of going into the future. That's 171,000, and then inflation is why it's kind of goes in every year. Questions about this? All right. So just important to note, in the tooling model, inflation just a base increase of 3% every year. And so if you're going to be doing even more capital projects, you can play around with that in the tool too and see what increase would be needed to keep up with those. I looked at what an increase would do for the customer bills inside town. Heather mentioned one of the things that you all were concerned about was making sure that your citizens could afford water and wastewater service. So I wanted to look at some of those bills, and I did an affordability assessment. I'll show you. But also, later on you'll see one of my recommendations is just to look at simplifying your rate structure. As it is right now, it's pretty complex to figure out what you're actually charged for your water and wastewater. And there could be some ways to simplify it and not actually charge the lower users much more, if at all. And yeah, you'll see that going forward. But for now, this is what kind of a 4% increase every year. And keep in mind, this is 2022 to 2023, and then forecasting up to 2027. The average consumption for your in-town residential usage is 2,400 gallons a month. So that's kind of the basic projection. And using that, I put it into our affordability tool. So I used kind of the current rate and then the increased rate for just the water side. So we're only talking about water here, not water and sewer. But since it's the same, it would just be double whatever it is. And then this is showing the demographics, kind of income buckets for Burnsville. So the kind of green blue mountain is the percent of the population from the right y-axis that is in each income bucket. So you can see, you know, it's not hugely variable, but the highest income bucket is that 50 to 75,000, and then the next highest is the 15 to 25,000 a year. And then the bars, the red and the blue bars, show the percent of annual income that is spent on water or wastewater bills. So this is for your rates now. We're looking at 2.7 for the lowest income bucket, and then just decreasing from there on forward.
Excuse me, just.
Yeah.
Excuse me, just a minute. Heather's got a question.
I was just gonna say, how we have this up on the screen, if you could just sort of, the lowest income bucket is 999,000. I'm sorry, 9,999, is that correct?
It's 9,000. It's under 10,000 a year.
Under 10,000. So the big red bar on the end is under 10,000. And what is the percentage of annual income spent on water and sewer service in that bucket?
Well, this is just for water, but it's 2.7 for just water.
And then it goes down, the percentage of annual income spent goes down as income rises.
Yeah, so most of your population spends less than 1% of their annual income on water a year, which in the EPA's analysis would say is very affordable. But you all have to decide, you know, what's good for Burnsville. Other questions? So this is looking at the entire population with the current bills. The next slide is going to show if with a 4% rate increase, what it would be. So that lowest income goes from 2.7 to 3.3%. But still the majority of your population is spending less than 1.5 or 1% or less on their water and on their water bills. And you could just double these numbers for water and wastewater. Another thing that we like to look at, so this is for the entire population, but we also can run the numbers for just the percent of your population that owns their home, because often renters, if you're renting, then oftentimes your water is included in the rent, so the rate increase may not affect you in the same way, or may not be directly incorporated into your rent. So now the numbers are even smaller, but the big difference here is that you can just see that the Green Mountain has changed significantly. So instead of being kind of even across, it's shifted to the right, which is what we often see, that the higher income buckets have a higher percentage of the population that owns their home. So this is kind of the population you would see are, you know, much more directly affected by water and wastewater rate increases versus the renting population, or the entire population, as the case would be here. And this is off of a tool we have online that's pretty easy to use too. And Heather and Leslie know where to find that as well. Questions about the affordability analysis?
No.
All right. I'm going to go through one more kind of piece of the analysis we did that we talked with Heather and Leslie about. And that's just simplifying the rate structure. As it is right now, there are a lot of blocks, and it's really hard to calculate the bills and communicate about which charges are what. It took quite a while for myself and one of our my colleagues that pretty much most of his days are spent looking at rate structures and entering them to figure out what was going. We couldn't figure it out, basically. And so I just kind of made a what if scenario. It's not a well-researched, refined, this is our specific recommendation, but this is kind of a general, what it could look like if you wanted to simplify your rate structure, and incorporate that conservation fee into the charge for over 10,000 gallons, so it's a little bit easier to see and communicate. So this is the way it is right now. So for each, there's kind of that base charge of 2280, and then each block going up from there charges a different price per 1,000 gallons. And it doesn't exactly equal out. So if you divide 4,000 or that 3045 by 4,000, it doesn't actually equal 765. It's a little bit more confusing than that. Well, this is what your rate structure looks like now. And a kind of what if scenario would be, for one service, you have your base charge, which is what you have right now for 0 to 3,000 at 2280. And then say you just said everybody 5,000 and under, you charged you an additional 550 per 1,000 gallons over that. And then 5 to 10,000 would be 750 per 1,000 gallons. And then over 10,000 would be that 1150. And then this is what the math would look like for that. So just for each usage in those chunks in each block, you're multiplying by that 1,000 gallons. And this is kind of a typical structure that we see in a lot of utilities. So if you did that, you can put that into the rate. What I did was put that into the rate tool and then look at the monthly bill comparison and calculate out, okay, if with the old structure, that's the black numbers, and the new structure is the dark red numbers. So for that first usage, it's the same because it's all included in that base charge. And this is the 4% increase a year. For that 6,000 gallons a month, it actually would turn out to be less than the current charge, which I would not recommend actually lowering your charges, but this is just for the sake of the kind of what if scenario. But then that difference is kind of made up in that the really high user bracket, that 25,000 gallons a month is where the new rate structure would be more expensive than the old rate structure. And so I guess what I'm saying is, and this would be generating that same revenue. I'm using the same consumption numbers, generating the same revenue, just charging different customers or different usage points, different amounts based on the new structure. So like I said, this is not like a fine-tuned, super refined, this is our highest recommendation, but rather just a thought experiment of, if you wanted to simplify, you could do it and not raise the rates for the lowest income customers, and make it a little bit more simple going forward. So with that, I think I'm happy to answer questions or talk about anything else, Heather, that I missed. And I'm also like, this isn't your last time to ever ask me a question. You can always send me an email or pass it through Heather and Leslie. We're kind of here just as a resource for y'all, whenever you want to talk about rates or infrastructure or whatever.
Okay, can you hear me?
Mhm.
We have the slides and we can send them out to everybody, all the board members. We had a couple of board members who were ill tonight and unable to make it. But we definitely want to get all this information in their hands, and it's been really good working with you and getting these numbers together so that as we move forward, with the multiple projects we have, whether we get grants or have to end up taking on more debt service, we at least have some benchmark to look at, and make database decisions, rather than just sort of stats in the dark. So definitely appreciate everything that you guys have done, you in particular, but I know you've got some staff that's also spent a lot of time plugging in numbers and things like that. And so this will be good to move us forward in our conversation over the next fiscal year as to if we want to make some changes with our rate structure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can plug, more debt service right into the tool and see what your rate increases would need to be to match that. as you get more information from DEQ about all of the debt service and projects going forward.
That's really valuable, I mean, to know, when you look at our debt service ratio, it looks pretty good, but these projects are not cheap. You add $1 million on your debt service and your rates are gonna have to. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions?
Kind of that same thing we talked about, was that a lot of consumers kind of like, not, since jumps, so this might be really long.
Sorry, I didn't catch all of that. I heard something about large consumers.
Yeah, well, just our consumers like, instead of going up, if you go over 1,000, or if you just barely increase it, you get stuck, so maybe that would be a better way to go around.
Decreasing the number of plots, what he's saying probably would be easier for the consumer to follow. And
Swallow.
swallow, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We definitely will be looking at that type of rate schedule and see if that's something we can utilize.
And I just want to remind you, it's legal to change your rates at any time during the year. It doesn't have to be done in conjunction with the budget. So if you find yourself with more margin in November than June, you can always take a deeper dive into your rate structure then.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, yeah, my pleasure. Feel free, like I said, to reach out if you have any more questions.
We
Hope you all have
will.
a good night.
You just-
Okay, bye.
I can see what we need. Did you read?
Yeah, it's hard. Maybe have, somehow we can
Yeah,
get,
they could be on the.
yeah, yeah.
We'll move on to, talk about it.
Oh, God.
See.
First, going to talk a little bit about our FEMA. I need to get your guys' input on that. So we have a total of 5 projects from. 4 of those projects were for FEMA purposes, lumped into one big project. So that's the culvert down under Meadow Road. The repairs that need to be done up near the maintenance shed, not out in the field, daylight in the stream, but along the road there. Then the repairs that need to be made over at Reservoir Village. And then the repairs that have already been made at Highland Street. Whole road. So that's been done. FEMA has sort of 2 processes that they go through. One is your standard review procedure, and that's what the Executive Lane project is here. The reason they wanted to leave Executive Lane in that category was because if we get down there and start clearing stuff out and find that we need more money than what has been estimated and what we have got in mitigation, we'd be able to apply for more money. The other 4 projects include in what's called a fixed cost category. So FEMA looks at your estimates and it goes through this step and that step, and then finally gotten to the end where they have made us what's called a fixed cost problem. Got 30 days to accept it, you don't have to accept it. We can send it back and say, no, we want all these to go through the regular process like the executive lane, and it just takes longer. This is the process where they basically come back and said, you've got these projects, we evaluated all of them, we submitted your engineering estimate on all of them. And, they're offering us a total of $160,779. I went through these with the mayor. He's familiar with all the projects and things that need to be done. Got a couple more questions for FEMA, and we think some of them are particularly reservoir that we, our crews will probably do that work themselves. So I need to ask him if that's allowed. Get a contractor. We might get a contractor to get estimates. All of just have a contractor, and we can do everything. So, bid amount. So they're under the amount that would have to be formally bid. And the better project. Still have to get it. Some of them require some engineering errors. But I just wanted to get some direction. When, software with all those projects, long time that we've been waiting for them to say, give them some money to find these.
Your recommendation. Thanks.
Yes,
So they think that you're fish.
I think it will be, and I'm not as confident in our project manager as I'd like to be, but my understanding from him is that money can actually, if you had a project that ran over budget a little bit and one that was under, that you could actually, once you get this fixed cost, payment, you can move some of that money around as long as you let them know. Is that Leslie Shane and all, is that the way you understand it?
Yeah. The only one that I was a little skeptical on, is made road. But I think there's no money on making shed. I think that'll come under a little bit. If it's much money, as long as it's okay to use. Making money, like pay it to, we've already legal one project.
Should we give them a first?
We did make that, legal budget, but I'm all everything else. Be done in their budget.
And Leslie, on, we can submit the time we put into this and also for some of the engineering studies we got to have done and estimate of. Is that all, can we ask for that within the fixed cost or is that all going to be on the Ziegler project? That's probably a question to me.
And, the only way for our, I don't know.
It probably in the package on this. In the. But
Is there,
we had to do that.
is there good days already started?
Yeah, we got this one, so it's June 3rd. Yeah. So, yeah, before we come back, so that's why I'm ready to get it in front of you guys. Have an additional meeting, maybe. These numbers are not going to change, but we could go back and forth. The engineer based them on, DOT numbers, but they are. I mean, it's all over, it's under the road, it's hard to see and know for sure. But, like I said, the metal road is the largest. And there, if we saw one son.
Hey, since I knew that creek,
Well, no, it's at the end of Meadow Road. There's a culvert there, and there's a deal, and that road is flooded. But we've got it kind of. And basically, the top of the culvert has, part of it has separated from one of the falls. That's what's going on.
At least under, obviously, not any.
And then when you went back. I'm good. What do you think?
Just a motion.
Accept.
I am gonna ask a question about, particularly on regular, these, because all of these say, contract, like, let's now make sure.
If you guys have each question, then we'll make a motion that we accept.
Yeah, and the only thing I really have for you all tonight is the tax report, which went out, on the 2021, we're at 98.13%.
Good job.
So that's good, a lot of, good work by Jackie. She hounds us, baby. And there's a few though that are wearing patience thin, so we're still trying to work on them, but that's a great collection rate during this time. And then there's some, like I said, some of it's personal property, some of it's, seems like a lot of times we end up with property that's been passed down from the states, so we got heirs all over the place, and nobody can decide who's gonna make that. We're working. But those are good numbers, and came in well above what we had basically budgeted.
Chad?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got two items for you this evening. The first one is Bike and Pedestrian Acceleration Steering Committee met second time. This was a virtual meeting on May 16th. They reviewed a draft project list, and they've got the projects kind of lumped into categories like bike and pedestrian crosswalk projects. They include a lot of potential new sidewalk, ADA improvements. They also reviewed criteria to score the projects, which is what they'll be looking to do at the next meeting, probably in July. So, different criteria like safety, cost, difficult, and different aspects to be able to score the projects so they can begin prototyping. And my other item is Old Time Days Fall Festival. They're requesting a road closure. If I'm correct, I believe it's from 7 to 5. That the request has been made for, and there should have been a map. September.
I mean, that would be the only concern. Is that being closed, we can't take March current over that area. And the whole north side of thing, I guess, Brian, Niles, Green, those kind of emergency vehicles that have to sometimes get people when the roof.
We'll say, fair. Seem to have
It's fine, they're like,
Really, you don't know more. Thanks. Public information on. So much three or more. That's important. Can't work it.
Any other printed record?
Can't work it. Any question? Is that a motion? Is that 7-5? Ready, please.
Any other ministries?
so we'll bring back, this is in September, right?
Right.
Yeah, we'll bring back a. Yeah,
See this, and I'll see.
and then. Well, we just need to direct from the, want us to move forward, get the, both road approved it, and then I see.
GLP.
Everybody agree?
So you had a chance.
It is, thank you.
Thank you. Anyway.
See, there, we got an issue with the generator. There's two holes. Down. So the generator is about 99 volts. Chances of coming up with a replacement they can't outsource and use parts, it's impossible to put it on. But right now, call in the generator. Jackson. Motor, back in it with 20-year-old generator parts. Out of the generator. We're working on that right now. We already have. From what? From what we looked at, I don't know if it's gonna be a comparable generator, but what's down there on the ceiling, I see.
How we going to see?
That's better than the quote for new. Yeah.
Stickers. You guys are.
We're working on that, we're trying to figure out. Kind of make it work. Better know, did receive a message from the guy at the water today, West Tech is fixing to ship out the gear out of the sewer plant. Hopefully it will be here it's what we send you. I can report. They are, they have said 6-3, they should go on. They're actually going to game today on it. They had sent me an email saying that they'd like to get it out, but they only said that it's not soon. They
What about the contract?
contractor, I'll get with them as soon as I have a for sure shipping date. They shows up. What I have. Oh, there's one.
You didn't talk about Baker Creek.
Have been done this year, but it's pretty good, it's correct. Yeah.
But once it got the two four out.
There's a lot of equipment, I think.
Yeah, who sent the two four?
Correction here. Holes and they're in there. Oh, that's.
Now let's talk about how we're gonna pay for all. I know. I know. Okay, I said the budget versus actual out to you guys. And it's pretty much at the end. So, it's pretty short. So, we'll move on to this ARPA money, this project ordinance for the ARPA. And it's the one that went ahead. As I look into, we've been on this long course about how we're going to spend this money. So finally, we eased it up. And now we can go back to them and police salary. So we're reimbursing ourselves for this police salary. And that's all that it's actually saying. And I broke it out by the lines so you could see it. And the School of Government had actually done a whole example, so I just copied it word for word except for the lines and put our numbers in instead of kind of argue with number. So I just need you to adopt this. We have in the first tranche, we don't have the second tranche, but it should be here this month. So, and I'll reimburse. It'll be, we're just putting it for the fund balance.
We'll eventually have them.
And then whatever is the cycle do it, we can pull it into the budget. Okay?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. No, that's water money. All right, next one is the actual I-9 loan payout, and it says it's amendment number 8. And you can look for it, it should be the first one. But it says sewer loan payout. And it's a small one here. And what it's saying is that we're actually taking fund balance in the amount of $393,532 to pay off this old I-9 loan, which actually freed up our budget. Before we only have this 57. And the debt service amount that we're going to use to pay out is $392,599, and the interest is $933. And I included the new payoff information that she gave me. And like you'd have the interest, we would be paying $43,185 worth of interest if we continue with the loan. And it's actually just freeing our budget up $40,000 a year. And so that's good, but it will keep rates lower this year. We actually had to increase it, so hopefully it'll go for the water. If we don't get it. All right, so I just need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve authorization.
Oh, okay, I can tell you, I actually wanted to pull some money from the actual general checking, because right now the water has $372,355. And if I take the hundred, I was gonna take 193,532, and that would leave 178,823 in there. Just to run on until it goes back in. And then I was gonna take 200,000 from the water. And it has 1 point, at $1,128,368. If I take it, Steve, that'll leave 928. That's okay. I don't know. How about I just give you my notes? Yes, I think it was. I know, I've just talked. 43,185.
That's great.
And it's actually about 47,000 that we'll save yearly. All right, you might have any questions on that? Okay, now to this big one, cleanup one. So if you'll just, I wrote very vaguely, but it covers all the, pretty much all the departments and all the things. So, okay, so the first one's really easy, and it's the state citations. We know we've got one policeman like throughout the kids, so I'm gonna have to raise the revenue line so I can raise the expense line for when I give the school board. But anyway, it's its own thing, so I have to raise it to keep never getting in trouble. And it's $7,000. All right, on the second page, this is the general fund cleanup. And these highlighted lines are actually just line item transfers, which they're already in the budget. I'm just swapping them around. So I'm gonna cover those first. The contribution from capital reserve is 38.4, the top line, 10,344,1,002. I'm decreasing that and putting it into fund balance for the fire tax, and that's 10,399,200. And I'm just gonna increase that 38. It's just gonna clean it up, when we were doing those fire departments, I put it in that line, and I just want it to all be in this together, so it's easier to share and look at, make sure I'm covered. And down here as well, on this 10,570, these highlighted lines below, 10,570, 7,400 paving, capital outlay, I'm decreasing at $4,900 and increasing this 10,570, 5,700 miscellaneous expense. I'm increasing that by 4,900. And that is for that pavement study, what was it?
Payment conditions survey.
Yeah. So that's just for that. All right, so then we're gonna start with the expenses, and then we're gonna work up here to how we pay for it. All right, so I'm increasing the full-time labor for the town center just to make sure there's enough, because this is a very tight budget. And I just don't want to, get standing one in the aisle. Get caught in it. I'm increasing it by 5. Then the vehicle fuel is the police department, the 10,510, 1,701. I'm increasing it by 12.5 because it's in the hole and we're getting a load of gas. Then grant expense, 10,510, 3,402 by $4,800. The way his grant settled this year is kind of in between. And so this is part of the year before's grant. Then vehicle fuel on the actual fire department, the 10,530, 1,701. I'm increasing that by $3,000. The heating fuel on the 10,530, 1,200, it's increasing by 1,000. I mean, well, the fuel is going to. Then capital outlay, it's 10,531, 7,400. That's that 10,000 grant that you got after this year. Let's see. And then 10,531, 7,403 contributions to capital reserve, and that's 8688. Up here above, you'll notice that that's a sales tax, the sales tax refund for what we paid indirectly on the new fire station. So up here is the money to cover that. And then street maintenance, 10,560, 1,302. We had some, some actual work we had to do over there in the fire department, and it was $3,500. The flood and expense line, the 10,560, 6,500, $4,500. That's for this HMH study for a sheet. We have to pay for that. So we increase in the post for those. Oh, sorry. And then down here below the highlighted lines, the contracted services, that's for sanitation. I just want to have some extra there, an extra month, just in case the insurance will be. I don't get, because it's a standalone too. And that's just a month's sanitation is $84.75. All right, so up here, we've got the sales tax refund that's covering that. Then I've got the fire department grant, that 10,000. And everything else is this fund balance contribution of 42,775. I'm pretty sure that the revenues will be covered because we are looking really good on sales tax and all of it. Yeah, I've not posted June, we're within 30,000. And then the way it runs, the next 2 months actually gets pulled back into this year because you're like 3 months behind, you put 3 months behind on your sales tax, so they pull out and pulls it back in. But I just want to make sure I'm covered. And now, the water and sewer. The generator is not on here because we did not know how much it's going to cost, so it'll probably be next month. But we're not with the big bucks. All right. I'll do the same thing here. We'll look at the highlighted lines because it's just a line item transfer. Decrease in professional services on the 3810-0300 and an increase in the 3810-0201, and that's salary water treatment plant. We hired this guy for last one. There was money in the crew line, and I was just going to shift it up, and this line had been, so I was just doing that. Okay, so we're gonna go from here again. All right, so the healthcare match, I'm not sure how I got out of that part, but anyway, it's the 3810-0400. I'm increasing it by 25,000. Then the 3810-1330, the fuel equipment, heating, $3,400. The 3810-1410, infrastructure supplies, $20,000. That's the water. And then down here, the sewer, the 3815-1120, electric wastewater treatment plant. I'm increasing that by 10,000. And then 3815-1130, electric sewer pump station by $10,000. And then down here in these last two lines, this is the art money, the 3810-6200. That was for this year without, and I'm decreasing that. And then here's the carryover in the 3815-7402. And I'm decreasing that by 262,447. And on the top, you'll see I'm also decreasing the revenues by the 240 and the 262,447. And so up here in these top two lines is how you're paying for all these 5 lines here in the middle of these. And the late fees are up $25,600 more than we had budgeted for. And then I'm doing a fund balance appropriation of $42,800. And I feel sure that the actual revenues are going to be good too because they're going to be in. So, but I just need to have that fund balance.
We just want to make sure it's there and then it's what we have in so the revenues are due.
Yeah, and if I don't actually move it, then but it should be fine. I just need a motion for that unless it's have any questions. Clear as mud.
Right, second.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's got it.
Yeah. it is.
Mr. Mayor, you do have call number showing there. On the meeting, we had 34 calls, 35 this past month, been told the year 187, and the breakdown that you have there. Everything had 3 columns in each category, so that turned out to kind of strange. Keeping in line with nothing else. The other things, the updates are on, I've gone through, updated all the AEDs, both fire trucks and one house and one here. Trying to keep track of them. Added them, they expire. And then they, those that came. I've gone to all the facilities and the fire extinguisher inspection. They could share in the fire. Inspected for the year, and that's how. Last time I have, we're having an open house. On the 11th. Two. Excited for that. So. Yeah. About a minute. Again. If you log somewhere where. Yeah, I'm trying to purchase the, this last week. Some options regarding to usual exceptions to our remote ordinance, changes to our remote ordinance. We sent those out. Get some language at the start of the discussion. If you all like to, any of that you would like to discuss, we can certainly do that. We'll change that. Mayor, the discussion with Mayor, but those probably maybe have some hearing. You put them up there. You got any questions? Thoughts, concerns, send it out. You have a recommendation? I feel like what we put in there, since some of those, what we basically did, just kind of give a summary was, the existing ordinance we have, which exists all 24 hours, 7 days a week, there's no exception to that. Basically, creating unnecessary noises, disturbing. You had some entertainment venues. Here in the future, somewhere commercial establishments. We also have crash fair, music on the square, we things that maybe are in violation. So what I did is put in some language which would go kind of into that section, which would allow for certain exceptions during certain times. Those types of businesses in commercial areas or festivals, those types of things. Very huge. I tried to think of the other example, you find anything that would fit that we certainly don't want to prohibit whether Saturday and have that in there. And then beyond that, the next section was sort of a catch-all. If you had something that didn't fit within those, was special occasions, I think it might be. The one example I thought of, if you had some sort of, and maybe a fire, which actually the residential network, wouldn't fit in the commercials. They could apply with a special, some sort of criteria. See the direction. That's what we put out there. I didn't put time in decimal levels and stuff. I think that starts to get very complicated when you're trying to say it can't be over. But equipment, things sort of setting areas, zoning areas where it will be allowed during certain hours. You'll have to also do that's that needs to be adjusted and changed. Are you pretty comfortable with that criteria? I think so. I think so. There's language in there about the one thing I didn't want somebody coming every week for it. I need this week. There's language in there about in considering that and how often this for this these organizations ask for this type of special permits, what type of event it is and I think putting that language in there, it's still going to be, it's not like subjective, it's not going to be objective, it's saying you get one and when time that needs some guidance on what's in there for issue and permit because of what we know. I just don't want somebody coming and saying, if you get this, it might be out of plug for work. You can go to call in that criteria. You make it. I have a problem with no. Hey, we have kind of very fire, you know, we go whatever the time is. Yeah. Very good. You know, matters. So,
I mean, technically, county fire.
yeah.
We technically.
But, this will have any changes, I think we get a program, it's a public hearing, or next time we can get into that, I think that, you know, direction you want to make to that. And then, next meeting, maybe, and how that goes. Still motion. Next meeting, how. Yes.
You can just take it on our website.
And the other things I have, our process is when we started tonight, we have a day, we said we had 2 events, the city and summer, street bicycle, and then there's grass fair. I'm going to first approval back to the education, that process that you all have. To work with. So I need a motion to do it both at the same time we can live. Here's some. Make a motion to approve both. Thank you. I really don't have anything permanent for some of the several meetings. I think the members. All right. All right. Thank you, Chief. Mr. Gordon.
Hello, council. So with last month, we had quite a few events come out of 26 events last month. And this month's a little slower with 20. But on June 11th, after you guys are done seeing Niles, you'll have to come over here. We're having the Annabelle's Haven. I believe you might be here for that. Is that correct? Yeah, I thought I read something about that. So the Annabelle's Haven will be on June 11th. I think it's June 17th. I'll have New Blue and Mountain Highway. That's 2 bluegrass bands coming in. That'll be a fun show to check out. And then we're still booking quite a few dates. Don't have very many weekends left at all. One of the few that I have left was actually booked probably an hour before everybody got here. I had somebody come in looking to book a wedding, so still booking quite a bit. Other than that, I don't really have a whole lot to report. I'd love to answer any questions if you guys have any. All right, well, we're still rocking. I'm sorry? Still rocking and rolling. Yeah, well, yeah.
Where are people outside here? Yeah, well. Good. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I had to say it forever. You're saying, what do you mean? It's gonna be seen, better to be seen than be you. Other than, just to say we're busy on any specific, updates for you this month. Based on that, here. Very shame. But unless you guys have any.
Good evening, thanks for having me here. I missed last month. Last 2 months, we've had 4 travel riders from the state of New York, the state tourism office brought them in and we showed them great time in Burnsville, and hopefully we'll be featured in some of the magazines. We have been featured in 9 articles online and in print over the last 2 months. The Prevalent Tourism Officer, we moved her to help promote the county, and the high route mentioned on social media, internet, that is and figure out what it is. We're continuing with our business after hours, and I put you guys there. This month is at Fillmore on the 16th. The Worker Networking event that we're seeing on is next Thursday, the 9th, at Virtual Line and more. And then we've got on the 4th stage at Town Center, our education program trainings, that we are having the small business and technology center from outside. So besides that, we hosted the first time ever this past month a ship luncheon. We had a pretty good turnout at, and Jamie gave a nice presentation on what's going on with the county. So just continuing that programming and any questions? No, besides that, I need to, I'm part of Crafts Fair. We're going to be fuller than definitely were last year, and about any potential emergency plans.
Thank you. Thank you. Here's one question. And then did everybody meet your request?
On their high country. Yeah, their fees used to be like nothing, and then they did a slight bump last year and then a bigger bump this year. But I would imagine they're better.
You gotta, it's kind of like a generator. Yeah.
Their grant writing and they're doing their GIS mapping for us. Much.
And if you look-
We did.
Yeah, if you look at the request on that purchase, I, Danny remembers today, some county would pay them, they want this.
Well, we wear them out pretty good.
I think we better.
We're the best.
That's a
Probably half up to our fee.
I would say if you compare that to RO, but the ROI we get is better than the comparison of the community.
Yeah, we're definitely in the platinum tier. Of givers for papers.
Closed session. July 2nd. It's cool. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Whatever.
Make a motion.
Second.
We can.
Huh?
We can.
Yeah.